We ate at Jim's Cafe.
Jim's.
And wherever this is. Where is this?
Really?
I don't know, Greeley, somewhere where it's at. But we're taking this out and testing it today to get the EFI going. And we're following Dad. And we found out that he doesn't have any brake lights.
So we gotta go.
We made it to a car show in Windsor. And a chili cook-off that's happening back there. There's some cool cars up here. Couple. Roadrunner. And Cobalt. Cobalt's freaking sweet. This thing's cool. And we are way down there. It's a pretty neat little thing. It's way too freaking hot out here though, so we're probably leaving in like 5 seconds. The fuel injected blown motor. This is like what Brandy wants to build. A gasser. Pretty neat. 69, probably my favorite year of Mustangs. I'm not even really big on green, but this is a really pretty color. A lot of sparkle in it. They're pretty cool AMX. I guess this guy is part of the AMC club. So Dad knows him. And a fully built Bronco. It's got like a full chassis and everything under it. A lot of money. Super nice though. I mean, look at this interior. This thing's badass. With a coyote in it.
That's what a roadrunner sounds like.
This is a pretty sweet Cuda. Here's Dad's Hornet. This is his wagon he calls Sis. This truck's pretty sweet. He's got air on it. And this is what we brought today. Still working on tuning the fuel injection. It's still doing some funky stuff, but we're just gonna have to learn how to fix it. I have no idea what this is, but I like it. It's an Austin Healey. That thing's badass. And a Mini. God, these things are so small. Well, this must be another Austin. 1966 Austin Healey. 68 Roadrunner. A 66 coupe like mine. He's got a big block on it. This is a pretty radical color on this Maserati. This thing has got super cool color on it. I think it's a wrap. It's pretty sweet looking. And then this one's flat black. Also looks pretty sweet.
Yeah, see.
66 baby blue. I love it. And I love you. Alright, I gotta go run and get parts, so I'm gonna take this. So this will be its second drive. It is filthy. Well, for this car anyways, it's pretty clean, but it's got bug guts all over it and lots of dust. But anyways, I gotta go do some running, get some parts. I was working on that International yesterday, learning how to crimp spark plug wires. Yeah, crimpers for an 8.5 millimeter wire. These wires are 7 millimeter, so I owe Nate some wires, is what I'm trying to say. Anyways, I'm gonna do some running around and I'm gonna bring you with me in case anything entertaining happens. If nothing entertaining happens, you're not gonna see anything. Of course I didn't have this recording, but first stop sign, push the clutch in, car died. Anyways. Are you having hot start issues with your Holley Sniper you just installed? Because I sure as heck am. Let's figure it out together. So, I went poking around on the lines and I found this. It's a troubleshooting guide. It's from Sniper. So, I'm going to start with the no start condition because that's basically what it's doing. I can get it to start, but I got to do a lot of funky stuff. So, I'm just going to start with this troubleshooting guide and we're going to see what happens. So, first thing it says on here, has the Sniper EFI pre-start checklist been read and understood? Yes. Does the screen turn on? Yes. Has the Holley Sniper EFI wizard been run, creating a base calibration? Well, we did do that. Does the fuel pump prime for 5 seconds? You turn the ignition on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are the sensors reading properly? Use the sensor verification section on page 2 for acceptable values. Map sensor 0, TPS 0, MAT 155, CTS 176, battery 12 volts. Okay, so we're going to see TPS is reading, so I'm slowly depressing it. Goes all the way to 97, back down to 0. Okay, so that appears to be right. When the engine is cranking, is an RPM value displayed? Yep, RPM is displayed, and see how it died? That's what we're trying to fix. Does the engine have spark? Yes, it does, because it will start. Does the engine start? No. If each of the items check out and there's no start condition still exists, please have a data log ready and contact Holley. No, we're not doing that. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is there's another troubleshooting page. Erratic idling condition. Oh, this one actually tells you to look at some idle maps. So let's try that. Idle speed curve. So it says an ideal idle speed curve is flat. And it says verify the idle speed curve is similar to the shape in figure 1, which this is a troubleshooting guide. Figure 1 is this guy. See how it's pretty flat? This is figure 2. Well, look at ours. Ours does move quite a bit. I don't know. What do I do here? Pull these down, maybe? Whoa, that's too much. How do we do options? Can we do entire curve? What is this here? I don't know what I just did. Point by point. I mean, this isn't pretty, but I'm making it flatter. Okay, we're going to save that. Does the TPS read 0 with the linkage at rest? Yes. And how we verify that is we go to monitor, multi-gauge, TPS. Where is the TPS? TPS isn't on there. -1. TPS 0. See, and it goes up when I do that. So 0. Have the throttle blades been set at idle so the IAC reads between 2 to 8? So we got to try and start it to get that to happen. So it says right now the IAC is at 31%. I like this dash. I'm going to adjust the throttle blades a little bit because that says between 2 and 8 and it's jumping from 7 to 9. So I'm going to open the throttle blades a little bit so the idle air control valve doesn't have to work so hard. Alright, so I turned that like, I don't know, a quarter of a turn. IAC is 4%. And notice how it's running smoother. It's not doing. It's not like an angry cat. That's because the IAC isn't ramping, opening, and closing. It's staying at 4%. Okay. Has the ignition timing been verified with the timing light? No. But we didn't change anything from when it was carbureted, and it ran just fine. So we're just gonna say yes, that we verified that. Are the AFR targets reasonable for the engine and cam at idle? See chart 2. Well, we're in the, there's chart 2. Reasonable AFR targets. 13.5 for idle, 13.5 to 15. I really don't know how to like get to everything on this screen, so you're just gonna watch me fumble through it. So some of these are not available if the engine's running, so that's why I just turned it off. Wizard? Home. File? File. I don't know what that means. Logging, we don't know any of this stuff. Okay, advanced, we don't have any of that. We don't have any of that stuff. Tuning, target AFR at idle, 13.8. So what did this say? 13.5 to 15. Cruise, 13.5 to 15.5. Okay, wide open throttle, 12.8. I mean, it ran good at wide open throttle and even cruise, but idle is where it was like having some trouble. In idle, it says it's 13.8, and it was air to fuel. It was getting lean. It was like falling on its face. I'm going to leave them the way that they are since we already changed where the throttle blades were at a little bit, and I'm going to see if that helps it. Does the idle fluctuate in a random, non-repeatable pattern? Well, let's see if it starts again. See, now it says the idle air control position is at 35%. Why the heck is it at 35%? See, you rev it and it dies. Now the idle air control valve is closing, so now it's at 23%. But watch what happens when I rev it and then let off the throttle. Annoying. All right, let's see what other documents we could find to reference. Well, I found this website, which is EFI System Pro. They've actually got some pretty good tech articles on here, specifically to the Holley Sniper. Tuning your engine startup. Seems like that's what we're currently having a problem with. Actual fuel pressure matches what is specified in the configuration. We did put an inline gauge, so let's turn it on and prime it and see what the actual pressure is. Yeah. So it goes to 54 PSI. Let's see if the configuration is at 54. I don't remember where any of this is at. We're just gonna fumble through stuff again. Fuel prime. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Fuel learn. I don't know what any of that is. Great. Nope, that's not it. Number of cylinders. Yeah, we got cylinders and whatnot. Actual system pressure. We're gonna set this to 54 because that's what it goes to. Save. It has been made. It requires ignition power to be cycled. Okay. Let's see if just that change makes a difference. See that? You get on the throttle and then you let go of it and AFR goes through the roof, tries to die. Why does it do that? It's 2 times in a row that it started right up and I didn't have to crank it for about 97 hours. That's good. So now let's see if we can, you know, just keep screwing with stuff and not actually test anything out and make it so it just won't even work at all. So let's figure out why it falls on its face after you let off the throttle. This is a manual car. See? Manual things are happening right there. When you're driving and it's a manual, you got to press in the clutch, which means you go from whatever RPM all the way down to idle. So it's a huge decrease in the engine speed. this thing falls on its face and oftentimes dies. If you just let off on the clutch again, then you force it to start again, or you could just, you know, kill the starter by starting it 97 times. So that's the next thing I want to try and fix. Let's figure that out. Out of the box, so this is for idle. Out of the box, Holley normally has their idle speed screw set at 2 to 2.5 full turns beyond where the screw first hits the throttle lever. This is normally completely adequate. Because we screwed with that, I just want to double check it. 2 to 2.5 turns past when it very first touches. So right here, see, that's the screw? That's where it very first touches. 2 to 2.5. Let's see where we're at right now. Oh, you can barely see in there. We need to get a flashlight. All right, hold on to your biscuits here. If you guys don't know what these are, you're missing out in life. I can barely see it, but it's right down in there. So that's 2.5, 3 turns. So see this right here? Watch it when it starts moving. See it moving? So what we want to do is that's touching. So half, 1, 1.5, 2. So that's 2 turns, which is on the low side of what Holley says, on your initial throttle blade position. So that's about how far it opens it up. So now that we did that, which is something else we screwed with, let's start it again to make sure it does frickin' start, because, you know, you screw with 97 things at once. It's really not what you're supposed to do, but, you know, I'm not smart, so I'll just make everything worse all at the same time. Anywho. So now the idle is really high, so we need to figure out how do we adjust that. So the idle air control position is at 0% right now. The idle is at 1800. Here we go, setting your idle speed correctly. So that is another topic that he has on here for troubleshooting. Once the engine is up to operating temperature, we're at 175, so I would say we're there. The idle speed can be set to what was configured in the wizard. To do this, open the initial startup gauge screen that was used in 17 with the vehicle in neutral, adjust the idle screw until the IAC position reads between 2 and 10. If the TPS position begins to read higher than 0, cycling the ignition switch will recalibrate. Do not attempt to set the target idle speed in IAC unless the engine is above 160. I just went 1/2 turn on that screw. We're going to look at IAC. Still at 0%. That's 1 full turn past where I started. IAC is still at 0%. Let's try and rev it a little just to make sure it doesn't do anything funny. Let's adjust this a little bit more. 1.25 turn further closed. IAC 0%. One and a half turns. IAC is at 3%. Right there. Bouncing between 4 and 5. So this says between 2 and 10. I mean, 4, 5, all of those numbers are between 2 and 10. While adjusting the screw, if the TPS position reads higher than 0, it never moved. It's always been at 0. It says if it does, then you could cycle the power, it'll recalibrate. Do not attempt this if the engine is not at operating temp, meaning above 160. All right, so we did that. Let's try to go back to our monitor screen that we set up. Home, monitor, multi-gauge 2, IAC 4. Let's try and cycle. See if we can start it. No throttle input. See, here's my piggies. That may be the smoothest it's hot started so far. Let's turn the fan on because we're gonna die in here. I got the doors cracked. Blistering freaking hot outside. Good Lord. Let me crack the doors a little more. We don't want to die. See, why is the IAC position at 34% again? I don't understand this. This is so frustrating. That's back to its freaking dying all the time thing. What the heck? The problem is I don't even remember what I did. So it's at 34%. Why is it at 34%? I just freaking fixed it. Let's check fuel pressure again, because remember we adjusted that. That was at 54. Bouncing around between like 56 and 58, so that's pretty good. So let's try and open the throttle blades a little bit and see if we can get the idle air control valve to stop working so damn hard. I just went a quarter turn in. Idle air control position is at 25% now. Adjust it more. Right, that's a half turn in. IAC is 0. So we want the IAC to be, so TPS is at 2%, so we need a cycled power. So it'll relearn since we affected it. All right, now IAC is down to 0, TPS is at 0. Adjust the idle screw until the IAC position reads between 2 and 10%. So right now it reads 0. It's a teensy bit, I adjusted it. Still says 0%. Let's give it a little bit of throttle and just see what it does. Still says 0. Adjust it a little bit more. %, 4%, 1%, 0%. So a little bit more. Bouncing between 0 and 2, back to 0, staying at 0. Since I adjusted that so much, I'm going to cycle the ignition and see what happens here. I want to see if it'll repeat itself. It's idling at 800 RPM, which is higher than what it should be idling at, because I think I set the engine RPM at 720 or something. Remember what we're looking for is we're looking for idle air control position percentage. We're trying to see if that changes. That's something I need to fix. All right, it's at 20, which it's not supposed to freaking be at 20. It's supposed to be between 1 and 10. I have no idea why I keep having issues with this idle air control position valve. I just adjusted it, you just watched it. And now when I start it up, it's at 20%. Let's see if we've got a vacuum leak somewhere that's throwing us off. Get some carb cleaner. If the RPM increases, that's a vacuum leak. Nothing yet. We got to figure out why this idle air control valve keeps opening and closing. Even after I get it adjusted. Why? I do not get it. It's frustrating. So what's the idler control valve at right now? 19%, which is too freaking high. Well, we set the engine RPM to 700. Let's see, idler control is now 0%. Let me unscrew this a little bit. It's a quarter turn beyond where it was when we started. Idler control is at 0%, engine RPM is at 720 or 730. Maybe what I'm doing is when I'm cycling power, I'm not giving it long enough for this to turn off. I don't know. So let me cycle power now. So right now, here's everything. 1% throttle, 0% IAC, 750 RPM. All right, we'll give it a little bit of throttle and just make sure it balances back out. % throttle, 0% IAC. About 730 to 750. Let's turn it off. I'm gonna leave it off for a minute. You're gonna wait with me. Let's let some magic go ahead and speed this up, you know, so you don't have to watch the whole minute. Okay, it's been a minute. So remember, engine RPM was 730 to 750, TPS was at 1%, IAC was at 1%. So idler control, it defaults at 30% when you start it, apparently. So it is dropping down the more throttle I give it. Now it's down to 15. Let's try it again. The IAC is why it's dying, because watch what happens after I rev it and then let off the throttle. 740 RPM. You hear it struggle? When it struggled, that's when the IAC went wide open. And to further look at what I'm trying to show you, watch the air-fuel ratio. 13,914, right? AFR went high. The idle air control position also was high. See? IAC opens, AFR goes down. It's because it's more air, so it's less fuel. We need to try and screw with that stupid tuning parameter. So now I have to figure out where the hell that screen is again. Let's turn power off so the engine stops. You know, we're learning. I'm sure that this is just, you know, default stuff that you got to get set up, but man, is it a pain in the butt. I don't know. Everything I find says the initial startup settings, which is what we already walked through. Adjust the screw until the IAC is between 2 and 10%. Cycle the power, blah, blah, blah. I just did that again, and I restarted it, and it came back with the same thing. It's bouncing between 750 and 800. IAC is at 0%. So this time it worked. I don't know why it didn't work before. Probably because I'm an idiot. All right, ever since I got this car, every once in a while, when you go to start it, the starter goes, sounds horrible. So I took the starter out, and oh boy, those teeth don't look super bad. Let me go ahead and rotate this around to some of the real bad ones. Look at that one. Oh boy. And these ones, it's real bad. I don't know what is causing that, but it's not awesome. So looking at the starter gear, look at that. I think I might run and go get a new starter, because that gear on that thing is like a couple of the teeth on there, or half of it, the tooth is gone. That's really bad. I don't know why that is, but that is why it is and what it is, and that's what it is. So figured I'd show you. All right, I ended up putting a new starter in here. Whew, that last one. Kind of an expensive day, you know. Did a starter on this because the gear's chewed up. Flywheel's also chewed up. We're gonna ignore that. Hopefully the starter fixes that problem. Went to take the Super Duty to go get the starter for this. Super Duty wouldn't start. Popped the hood, found battery cables corroded. Batteries were dead. Did a battery test with my battery load tester. One of them, so they're both 850 cold cranking amps. One of them came back at 211 cold cranking amps, and one of them came back at 197, I think. So, you know, that wasn't gonna work. So I, you know, wanted to do a starter today, and I ended up doing a starter and 2 batteries. So $500 later, here we are. Okay, we're finally back in the car. Now, the last time we started it, you've seen what it did. It started. The freaking idle air control valve was at 1%. It better freaking do the same thing again. Now it's going to be a cold start, so it'll be a little different, but let's try. Oh, and this is the first start on the new starter. So the coolant temp is 125, so remember, if it's under 159, then it won't tune. If it's 160 or above, it'll start tuning. So this is not a good representation of if the idle air control did the same thing it did before. So we basically just got to let this sit here and idle and warm up. And then once it does that, we're going to cycle power and make sure that the idle air control valve stays at freaking 0 or 2 to 10 or whatever it's supposed to be at, not at 48. But it's cold right now. That's why it's at 48, so I'm going to calm down. All right, it's been idling for about 10 minutes. It's at 180 degrees coolant temp. And idle air control position, 0%. Let's try and give it a little wrap. Okay, let's try and turn it off and then restart it and see if the frickin' idle air control valve stays the same. Right now it's at 0, which is too far closed, but I don't care. I just want to see if it repeats itself. 1, 2, here we go. It's off. Kind of dying in here from, you know, exhaust. I got all the doors open, but still, you know, the big fans going up there. I need more fans in here. I need a porticle. If you got a porticle and you want to give it to me, let me know. Okay, let's start this back up. I'm gonna let it run until the fuel pump's done. Okay, fuel pump is done. Let's crank it. Remember, our target RPM is 700. So it is idling a little high. That's why the idle air control is at 0%, is because our throttle blades are open a little too far. So I guess I'll try and close them a little bit, even though I feel like I'm gonna go down the same road where the idle air control valve just does whatever the frick it wants. But let's try. I do the same thing over and over again because I'm retarded, so. Okay, this is a little harder to get to because that's on there. That was about a quarter turn. Remember, we're looking for 2 to 10% on idle air control valve. Ooh, and it's bouncing between 0 and 2. That was a rev up to 4,000 and then I just let off the pedal and it didn't die. Maybe I fixed it. I don't know. I really kind of want to test drive it, but it just rained and I just wiped this thing down, so that ain't gonna happen. All right, we're gonna turn it off and leave it off for, I don't know, like 5-10 minutes to simulate we're getting gas or something. And then we're gonna try and start it again. So right now, let's go back to this screen. Throttle position 0, IAC 1, 720 to 700, 711 to 720 RPM. Okay. Now I'm gonna leave it off for like 10 minutes and I will get back to you. Calm down. Alright, it's been sitting overnight. It says that the coolant temp is 95, which is kind of weird. It's held that overnight. Anywho, let's try and start it. Let's try and see what it does for idle, TPS, and IAC position. Let's let it warm up and see what it does. All right, here's the first warm start today. Coolant temp is 199. Hard to see all those. IAC is 28. Fired right up. The IAC being at 30% is kind of unusual, but I'm going to drive it around a little bit and see what it does. See if it falls on its face when you press the clutch in. Here's our first stop we got to go to. Press the clutch in. Alright, we're going to go shift, but I'm going to do a really long shift on purpose. Stop anyway, there's people in the way. Alright, here's another hot start. We went to the grocery store. We got cinnamon rolls. I started it in gear and it started. That's good. New starter, hasn't done any grinding yet, so that's also good. Alright, let's try and drive it home. First time I pressed in the clutch, it died. Here's the second time. Well, it didn't die that time. IAC is down at 1%. AFR spiked to 20 when I let off. AFR spiked to 17 when I shifted to third. Went to 20 when I went to fourth. It's interesting. So IAC when I'm driving is at 20%. I wonder if I can change that default number, because I really think that being open more is letting more air in, and that is why we've got those lean spikes. Sometimes it can't recover from on its own, and that's why it dies. So maybe what I'll try and do next is I'll try and reduce that IAC default position I forget what they call it, but it's like a default position it stays at. Maybe I'll try and cut that to 10